Okay, hi there. We're going to have a quick look at Red Giant Software's new version of PluralEyes. So that's PluralEyes 4. PluralEyes 4 replaced the previous version of 3.5 and it had quite a big interface improvement in this update. And I do genuinely quite like it. However, one of the problems that I have with it personally is the workflow between the application that you see in front of you, Premiere Pro, and PluralEyes. It used to be in 3.5 that you could very easily use the PluralEyes connector, go into PluralEyes, take your sequence with you, sync everything that you needed to, and then bring it back into Premiere Pro. Really neat and tidy. It took a while to get there because certainly the earlier versions of PluralEyes just weren't doing that the way that 3.5 did it. And now in 4, they've definitely upgraded and improved a lot of the features, but they've taken away a few of the core processes that I really liked and used to use, and certainly unfortunately now they're also kind of forcing the upgrade from 3.5 to 4, because with the latest version of Premiere Pro, which is this one here, so the 2015.4 release, it's basically the case that 3.5 is no longer supported because essentially Adobe have got rid of the extension manager, and as a result that means the PluralEyes connector isn't working, and I think that's why essentially it's happened. That said, they have introduced in PluralEyes 4 a PluralEyes 4 panel-based interface, and that's really nice. It looks good. It obviously works. You can integrate it into your current panel system in your Premiere Pro user interface, workspace, whatever you like to call it. So with Premiere Pro and PluralEyes now, it is really simple, because all you have to do essentially is make sure that your current sequence that you want to sync is ready to go, and you pretty much hit sync and it goes and does it. You've got option here to open in PluralEyes, and for me that's the way I prefer to do things, because I like to see it sync and have the option to maybe sort of finesse that sync prior to coming back to Premiere Pro. But you've also got some settings here. Now, again, this is where I've found PluralEyes 4 to be a little bit of a failure in certain respects, and I think hopefully this will be improved in future updates. But essentially, you've got the opportunity to choose to color an unsynchronized clip, so anything that basically doesn't get synced will become a rose-colored label, so you'll see them in your timeline very clearly which ones are and aren't coloured, therefore to work out which ones are and aren't synced. And then you've got the move unsynced clips to the end, which I think was something that PluralEyes 3.5 used to do anyway, so you can tick that if you want to, and you can replace the audio, so you can have an audio replaced sequence created, so you're using the very good audio from your audio recorder and removing the camera audio associated to your video clips. So personally, I don't like the unsynced clips to be moved, because if I have those unsynced clips moved, it's sometimes then very hard to kind of work out where they belonged in the sequence of things. Yes, they're all numbered and they've got file names, and you can essentially, if you're going in sort of chronological order, they should fit in. But I just found it's much easier to keep them where they are and then work from there. So I tend to leave this unchecked. This one here I would love to have work, but as of yet I haven't had it work successfully. And I'll try and show you what I mean. I'll go through a few processes. The other thing that I like about this workflow, as opposed to taking my sequence, exporting it as an XML, Final Cut Pro XML, and then taking it into PluralEyes and syncing it, and then doing it that way, what I would class as kind of the manual way, or opening PluralEyes 4 itself directly, and then from PluralEyes 4 bringing in all my clips, syncing them, exporting the XML, and then bringing that XML back into Premiere Pro. The trouble I found with that is that what happens is PluralEyes 4, the XML that comes in, it brings back in additional media. So what you'll see here is in my media bin here, I've already got all my video organized. I've already got all my video. I've already got, and as you can see here, I've already brought it down into my sequence. I've worked out which camera was doing what. I've brought in all of the audio. And previously in 3.5 version of PluralEyes, when you went out to PluralEyes to sync it and then brought everything back, it purely brought back just the synced sequences rather than bringing back additional media or duplicate media, essentially. Because then what happened was you then ended up with a load of extra media which was synced, and in the synced sequences, and then you had a load of other media which was just sitting there in your media bin and not actually synced, and it just became a bit of a management nightmare personally. So I felt that the way 3.5 did it was really, really nice, because you didn't have to, essentially, if you're particularly OCD like me, you didn't have to start replacing media in the sync sequence with the media that was already nicely organized in your project bins. And what also was really nice is it basically, if PluralEyes had to do any kind of auto audio drift corrections or anything, and it created a new file, so ceremony groom lapel 1 auto corrected or drift corrected, it would just put that file right next to the source clip in my folder structures, my bin structures back in Finder. And that was great because it just meant it was very easy to manage where all the media was. So let's just get into it. So here's the sequence. Need to sync this up. Obviously, PluralEyes 4. One way that we can do it is just by hitting synchronize, which is what we're going to do now. It does take a little while, so I may well just, well, I say it takes a little while. PluralEyes is incredibly fast, and you just couldn't do this quickly manually for sure. But it does take a little while just to run through this. So probably what I'll do is I'll get this started, and then we'll just speed it up to come back to where we are. But do take note, I've got the color unsynchronized clips box checked. Equally, I've got the move unsynchronized clips to the end unchecked. Okay, let's give this a go. So this initial stage is basically just PluralEyes for taking all the media, getting it all organized, leveling audio and correcting drift. And what it will actually do is it will then start to synchronize, and then it will come back and prepare the media again if it needs to do any further auto correction in terms of drift, things like that. As I say, I'll just let this do its thing, and we'll come back in a second once it's all done. Okay, cool. So you'll see that the sync has completed. And what you'll notice on the bin side is that we've got a synced sequence that's been brought in and then opened. And that we also have the ambient mic, band, groom lapel, all of the, essentially the sort of official full audio recordings brought back in. And you'll see that the actual sequence has been synchronized, which is great. However, let's look at this. So if I come along to this side and we zoom right in, and we look at that marker, basically that says unsynced. Now that is not changed color. That should have turned to a rose color. So that should have changed to that color, but it hasn't. It hasn't, and it doesn't make it obvious at all that obviously that's unsynced, other than the fact that it gives me a little marker, which is fine, but the marker doesn't always work. So that's a little bit of a shame, and I can't remember now what. We'll leave it like that. Okay, so basically you'll see that one's unsynced, but also additionally this clip at the end is unsynced, is not synced, but you'll notice that there's no marker to tell me that it wasn't synced. That I don't also believe that there's any reason why they shouldn't have not synced, because there's clearly audio here, and there's some, a round of applause, which will make it quite obvious that it really belongs here, where there's lots of rounds of applause and they're kind of ready to walk out. So frustrating, because not only is it not synced, it's shoved it to the end of the sequence, it's not giving me a marker, it's not changed color. Very, very frustrating. And only two syncs seem to have not synced, although again, it's hard to know what has actually synced here, because we assume that all of this is good, but we don't know. It could be in, out. I mean, I don't actually think these sequences are where they should be necessarily. These three clips here, sorry, are where they should be. They look like they might need to be leveled out a little bit, because I'm pretty sure they're not. Yeah, see, there are cuts there, so they haven't synced. So that's really frustrating, because these three clips aren't synced, and maybe they couldn't sync, but it hasn't told me. There's also no report to say that it has or hasn't synced. Normally, if you have effects on your clips, then it will say, by the way, these clips didn't sync, or these effects didn't come across. But there's no notification there that anything's untoward. But obviously, you can see those didn't sync, these didn't sync, and they certainly didn't change color like they're supposed to. So that is a little frustrating and a little disappointing, because really that should be a lot better. Plus, also, as you can see, why do I need all of these extra files coming back? They're already here. and I use those. These are the ones that I use to drag in to the sequence in the first place. Why do these need to come back? They didn't with 3.5, they do with 4. I don't understand. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, I think if I can undo what I just did. There we go. I've moved it back to a pre-synced state. And actually where your files actually end up is they go in Documents, Red Giant, PluralEyes, and that's where they end up. So I'm just going to get rid of those as well for the time being, because we just want to start again. So move those to the trash, and then equally, if you go into your media folders, you'll see that. Actually, no, sorry, beg your pardon. You actually get a PluralEyes temp file is where the sync temps go for now, which is quite nice, because that's one feature I do like about PluralEyes 4, is that previously this used to put a folder like this in every single individual media folder where there was some synced footage. So what I like about it is that does that for you, and it's all here, and it's very easy to see. Plus, you can very easily delete them by using PluralEyes 4 in the preferences. You can just delete them and get rid of all these temporary files that you don't need anymore. I'm just going to get rid of this as well because I don't want it. Okay, right, I'm back to where we were before now. So I haven't synced anything. I'm ready to sync. I've brought all my media, which I've already loaded and sorted, and brought it all in. I'm ready to sync this sequence, which is a wedding ceremony, as I said before. It's ready to sync, but this time, instead of going synchronize here, we're going to take it to PluralEyes. So little button here, open in PluralEyes, it saves the project, opens PluralEyes 4. Really cool. And what I love about it is it just brings all that footage straight away, it brings it straight in, and it starts getting it ready to sync. And obviously what's nice is you can sort of see where it is. Again, I'm just going to let this finish off, and then I shall come back and we'll go through the next little steps. Okay, great. So PluralEyes 4 has now got everything in and is now, as you can see at the bottom here, 41 clips ready to synchronize. So I'm ready to do that. Just before I do, a very quick tour around the interface here. Obviously you can see all the media, so it's brought in all my cameras, it's got the audio recorders, it's got the waveforms ready. It's very, very nice. It looks much neater than the old interface, which is good, and it's quite simple. You can either add more, synchronize, and it obviously exports the timeline to grayed out for the time being because we haven't actually done our sync yet. This little button over here is for offload, so it's a completely different application that Red Giant offer. I haven't played with it very much, so I'm just going to leave it aside for now, but essentially it's a way of offloading card media and ensuring you've got all of the card media off successfully, and it's all the right size and the right number of files, etc. So you're not going to get any issues with for backing up and so forth, or extracting that media from your cards. So that's what it's for. But if you go to PluralEyes 4 into preferences, I just want to show you this quickly. So general, obviously you've got all the information that you need there. Temporary sync files, and this is where you can either have a PluralEyes sync temp folder along with the media, which is what used to be the default. You couldn't change that. Now we have the option to put it wherever we want, which is great. So we're doing that. And equally, when closing the application, you can automatically delete temporary files that are older than 30 days old, or just press this button and manually delete them all. Very, very handy, because they do take up a little bit of space after time. And once you've got the sync done, you don't really need them again. So that's fine. We've got that all sorted. That's good. And then in terms of these other options, the main one you're going to really see that's of any benefit to you is the sync. So synchronize, cancel sync, reset state of clips. The correct audio drift is currently default as on, and that's fine because we do like that feature. It does help a lot. So let's synchronize this footage, and you'll see it is very, very quick. And what you'll notice equally with this is all of those clips have now turned blue to show that they have synchronized themselves and they are in sync. And what you'll find is the clips, when doing it this way, that don't sync, they will turn red. And that is exactly what you'd expect. It's actually what happened in PluralEyes 3.5. Everything that didn't sync essentially turned red or turned a different color to show you that it hadn't synced, which is good. And you were also able to then manually tweak the position of these unsynced clips. Now, so you'll notice here, actually, what's funny about this, or interesting about this, is if we view the timeline to fit, so there we go, that's fitting there, it is, okay. So you'll notice that this time, this clip that didn't sync previously has now been synced, and there obviously all these other little files which I suspected hadn't synced earlier. Now, okay, a lot of them are very small. This one particularly is a very small clip, and there's a good chance that it wouldn't have synced because it's just so small. So that's fine. You might have to manually do that one. Equally, the one at the beginning, very, very small clip, might have been tricky for it to sync for whatever reason, and that's fine. I mean, if you zoom in, you can kind of see there is some waveform there. And you just zoom in, pressing the bracket keys, sorry, the plus and minus keys, and then if you hit the bracket keys, you can actually increase and decrease the waveform heights, so you can get a better idea of where things are. That said, there is a bit of waveform there, so I'm amazed it didn't really do a job. And another thing that unfortunately is missing in PluralEyes 4 that used to be in 3.5 and previous PluralEyes is an option in the sync to try really hard. I know that sounds bizarre and you think, well, why doesn't it just do that anyway? And I'm assuming PluralEyes 4 just does that, but syncing with try really hard used to be brilliant, and it used to take these little clips and it would work out what those little clips are, and it would generally put them in the right place. And it was a nice little feature that just, I feel like we just miss a little bit now, unless it's been built in, and I hope Red Giant can tell me that's the case. But the thing that frustrates me slightly is if I come in here and there's a clip here, okay, we know it's not synced, it's turned red. You can obviously hold the shift to get a thumbnail view, which doesn't seem to be working, which is not very handy, but it doesn't seem to be working. Obviously you can come to your media over here and hit the media button, and you can actually see, if we're looking, that's the clip that hasn't synced. Okay, fine. So it's not synced, we need to move it, and let's say we know that it syncs over here somewhere. It's not something we can just click and drag, which is frustrating. We can't remove it. We remove it, show in player, show in finder. Not very helpful. You can't unselect it or tell the system that it's not synced. You only can restate that all of the clips, not just individual ones, and then move them. So as far as that's concerned, that's stuck. That's there. You can't move it anymore. You used to be able to nudge it back and forth to fine tune. I'm just going to try the options that used to do that. No, it doesn't want to work. Doesn't want to work at all. So that's very frustrating, because that was a feature that was really handy, because you could use this interface to finesse your sync, get everything that you wanted in sync, and then send it back. Now, let's say we're happy and okay, these little clips didn't sync, we can't get them to sync, but we're going to work it out, but we're going to do that back in Premiere Pro. This is where in 3.5, if I press the export timeline and then I decided on my settings here, where you're going to save this XML, export Premiere Pro, again, color unsynchronized clips is on, and move unsynced clips to the end. I'm going to turn that off because I don't want it to move them. I want them to stay where they are in sort of the synchronization here. I don't want them to be bumped to the end, but I do want them to color so that they go rows, so they colored up, and we can obviously quickly assess which ones were and weren't synced. So I'm happy with this. Now, as I say, in 3.5, what you'd do is you'd hit export here, and it would just literally bring in just the sync sequence to Premiere Pro over here, and that was it. And it would reference back to all of the original video and all of the original audio clips. And if it did need to bring in like the corrected audio drift files, it would bring those in, and it would just put those in the right place next to the original file that it had to do some drift correction on. So very neat, very handy. You could get working very quickly. Unfortunately, we click export now in PluralEyes 4, and what it does is it essentially takes us to our XML. So okay, well there's our XML, and it's in there, which is fine. So I know where that is. But if I come back into Premiere Pro, it's not here. Not nowhere to be seen. So I have to go and get that XML manually and bring it in. So file, import, and we're going to bring in that XML, import, and here comes XML now. And you'll see now what it's done is it's done exactly what it did before. It's brought in all this extra audio, which is now additional audio to the audio I have here. So, it's completely unnecessary. It's brought in the sync sequence, which is good. So I can put that sync sequence, away and start working with it. But let's open it up. Oh, and look at this. You'll see that, okay, it hasn't moved the unsynced clips to the end. So that's good. but what it hasn't done is it hasn't colored the clips to tell me which ones were in and out of sync. So now the only way I know this is to go back to PluralEyes and see them, and then come back here and manually change the colors myself. Complete waste of time. This should be working, and it's not. And it's not as if we've got any options unchecked. Very, very frustrating. So from my point of view, PluralEyes 4.1 needs a little bit of finessing, because it's taken a lot of the great features of 3.5 and it's stripped a few of them away, and there's clearly something not quite right with the way the colouring of the unsynced clips is working. And again, equally, I had issues, although it didn't show this time, when I literally so I opened up PluralEyes 4, I brought all my clips in straight to PluralEyes before I did anything in Premiere, then synced it, then sent it to Premiere by importing the XML. And at that point, it actually brings in all of the cameras, so it brings in all of the extra video files that you put in that sync as well. So you end up with duplicate video and audio files. So it's a pain then, because you've got to sift through all of that stuff if you don't want to have duplicate media sitting in your project. And okay, yeah, it's only referencing the files on the drive somewhere, but it's just a pain, because it also doesn't, if you do it that way, it also doesn't support Premiere's new proxy workflow. So you'll notice here, I've prepared all these media files that are the ones sitting in my bin over here, have been prepared and have proxy files attached to them, because that helps speed up the editing workflow, especially because some of these files are 4K Ultra HD files. So with this proxy workflow, you can then start working with your proxies very, very quickly. Great for multicam, and then you can easily switch them off or export without them, color grade without them. It's very, very handy. But if you do it this way, when PluralEyes 4 brings back in these extra video files, if you go straight to do a manual sync in PluralEyes, then bring the XML in afterwards without going via the PluralEyes 4 panel, then you get the additional files just come back in, and they have not been had the proxies attached to them, which is frustrating. Yes, you could just attach the proxies and it probably wouldn't take very long, but it's just a pain. And I think obviously this is because we've just got Premiere Pro's new release out, and PluralEyes 4 hasn't been out long, so I'd imagine there's going to be a little bit of time for them to come in together harmoniously and kind of have all those things ironed out, but it's still a frustration. And what particularly is my problem is that 3.5 with the extension manager and the connector, so you could easily use this extension, PluralEyes 3.5, click, it would take you into PluralEyes, sync everything up with all the extra features that I said, bring everything back without the duplicate files coming in. It just was a great way of working. And unfortunately, it wasn't a case of saying, well, I don't want to upgrade to PluralEyes 4 because it's not working. Until they get it working, I'm not going to upgrade, because sadly, in the new version of Premiere 3.5, and the connector wasn't supported or isn't supported. So it's a real shame. And that's it really. But overall, PluralEyes 4 is a fantastic, PluralEyes in general, sorry, is a fantastic setup. It's a fantastic system. It's so much easier to sync all your files together. I use it all the time, and I think that's possibly where the frustration comes with PluralEyes 4, that we've been forced into an upgrade, and the upgrade isn't quite ready to help us with a streamlined workflow. So it's going to take a little bit of time for us to iron this out. I do hope this video helps for anybody who's watching from Red Giant, who's able to come back to me in terms of my support case that I filed with you recently, but also in terms of fixing some of the bugs that we're clearly seeing here in this iteration. So cool, thanks for watching. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, thumbs up, like, please do subscribe if this has helped in any way. If you're having any problems similar to this, do subscribe below, and subscribe and comment below, and then we'll hopefully have a good conversation about that, and we'll get some news hopefully soon about an update that fixes all these issues. Cool, thank you very much for watching.